Once again, I have to laugh at myself because of the mirror image property of the camera. My head always goes the opposite way that in my mind, I think it's going to. So just a quick update video. I haven't posted probably in a couple of months, maybe 6 weeks. Lots going on. So just got back from a number of interesting trips that weren't particularly overlandy. Kathy and I have been living here, Kathy for just over a year now, myself for, just under a year with Kathy, myself just about a year and a half, here in beautiful Southern California. We knew this was probably going to be a fixed period of time because most of my upcoming work is going to be on the East Coast. So I knew I'd end up, ending up probably back in Midwest. So we never sold our house and we're headed back there. Now, a lot going on. I've got finally the 1 Ton Cummins, got it on the road and going, just enough to drive it from Northwest Indiana toward our home in Illinois, and immediately took it to the body shop where it has been since kind of being resurrected. So over time, and in this video, I'll post a few stills of where we're going with Tiny and why we think, how I think the project's going to end up. Very excited about what we're doing with that. We have purchased, placed on the order, have not yet received an AntiShanty RR-1 Rigid Roof 1 adventure trailer. Hopefully receiving that around the time we go back to the Midwest. I had a great business trip to Australia, which was almost exclusively business, hotel, plant. But I did have a weekend in there, so that worked out really nicely that I was able to do a little bit of sightseeing. I've got some video of that in an area near Brisbane. And then I got to see here, this is Memorial Day weekend, got to see some ROTC buddies, some of whom I hadn't seen in 35 or 40 years. And I had this wonderful opportunity because the situation of one of my friends, we got to stay on Admiral's Row at Norfolk Naval Base, which is extraordinary. There are these amazing historical homes from the Jamestown exposition from 1907. So I've got just a few little clips and still photos, but that's what we've been up to. And probably around 4th of July weekend, somewhere in there, we will be doing the big road trip, driving from here in beautiful Southern California back home to north central Illinois. And hopefully, it may not work out with the timing, hopefully we'll be pulling our new AntiShanty RR-1 adventure trailer with us. We have appropriately named our trailer Argo from Jason and the Argonauts. That's going to be our adventure, and I'll put a little bit more about that later in the video. What can I say about Tiny? Not even sure where to begin. Tiny is a 1996 second-gen 12-valve Cummins turbo diesel, 1 ton 4x4 dually. He is an absolute monster, appropriately named Tiny by Kathy. The main thing to understand about Tiny is that he is in very rough shape. As the mechanic who repaired the brakes said, one of those cars there where your gas mileage improves every time you hit a bump. So Tiny is a project. He's basically going to get a new chassis, be rebuilt from the bottom up. Why would we keep him? Well, partly nostalgia, partly because he's got a lot of great aftermarket goodies. And my goal is to render this macho power wagon from the 1970s paint scheme onto Tiny once we're done. So we'll see how it turns out, but in the channel you'll occasionally see some updates on Tiny. Our other big project is that we have purchased an AntiShanty Rigid Roof 1 adventure trailer. We'll probably cover that in more depth in some future video. This is just a clip of us visiting Overland Expo, Southern California, which helped us make our final decision. So I think many times we Americans overlook the enormous size of Australia as well as kind of get lost in where things are. So at least I always do. So my last trip to Australia, again for business, I work for a building products company that has Australian roots, was all in Sydney down by the Quay. I forget that Brisbane is not all the way up on the coast. It's just about, 2/3 of the way up. Brisbane was always interesting to me from World War II history. That was one of the original proposals, was to defend Australia at the quote-unquote Brisbane line, which gives you a sense of how much of Australia would have been surrendered. Instead, Douglas MacArthur famously defended Australia up in Papua New Guinea. But so I was in Brisbane, Sydney's down here, Melbourne's here, and then if you remember the other side, Perth is over here, Darwin's up here somewhere. So that's your kind of almost like your rough corners of Australia. So my work this time was up in Brisbane. I actually ended up flying to Sydney, then catching a domestic flight up to Brisbane. And then specifically around Brisbane, the city proper, I was actually down here. Our plant is down in Carroll Park, and my hotel was down here, Springfield Lakes. So it was a nice trip, but again, most of my trip consisted of going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Now, a friend at the plant said, here's a bunch of interesting things to see around Brisbane. So I stuck around for a Saturday. And while one option would have been to kind of go down here to the Gold Coast, there's just amazing things to see along here. Of course, amazing things to see in Brisbane. Instead, I ended up at a national park. You can see down here, it's just about an hour and a half, 2 hour drive, something like that. I assume I pronounce it correctly, Lamington National Park. It is amazing and beautiful, and it is rainforest. So that's the other thing we forget. The climate is completely different. And of course, it's the southern hemisphere. So I was down there basically during their fall, which is our North American spring. You really have to love Australian place names. This information center is at what I believe is pronounced Binnaburra. Had a wonderful little drive there from the hotel, Springfield Lakes area, down to the national park, and there checked in at an information center, got some good suggestions on where to hike and where to grab lunch, and had a wonderful late morning, early afternoon hike in the rainforest. It was a very entertaining and interesting talk with the ladies at the visitor center. I learned more, we did more talking about American politics than about where I am here in this rainforest area. Quite a few interesting signs. I took some still photos. But this is properly rainforest. It's quite chilly right now because, again, they're going into their fall. This is the coldest month. I brought a sweatshirt, but I don't think I'm going to put it on just because I think even walking in this drizzle, once I start walking, I think I would be too warm if I were wearing a sweatshirt. It's about a 6-kilometer hike. Well, actually, as I stand here and feel the breeze up out of the valley, maybe I will go put on my sweatshirt. But it's going to be about 3 kilometers each way. Should be quite beautiful. This is something that caught my eye right at the beginning of the trail. Little petrified logs on their sides, kind of locked into the rock layers. I'm armed with my jacket, sweatshirt actually. I'm ready to resume the trail. I got a watch holding this in my hand. I've got a Coke bottle in the other. So these rocks are quite slick and there's quite a bit of mud out here. And they did tell me, I guess this is the rainy season, so on the board, most of the hiking trails are closed. You can kind of see you got to be careful where you put your feet. One thing I've noticed, these Salomons are okay, but some of the other decent hiking boots I've had were really bad on wet surfaces. But anyway, so this is a Saturday. I left the hotel near Brisbane. I thought, I got this advice from one of the guys at the plant. He said, why don't you check out this national park? Very glad he did, because it was just a nice drive. About 1,100 meters elevation, so only a few thousand feet. But I definitely felt the elevation change. I'm not using Gaia or anything here just because I didn't want to pay for the $10, $20 a day, whatever it is, roaming fee. So I'm just using my work phone for the cellular connection. This is my personal phone. I'm just should be keeping in airplane mode. Interesting. So again, this is their fall, so it's interesting to see so many flowers and blossoms. And there's lots of signs about wildlife, which then you laugh and realize, well, I'm in Australia, so they're talking about koalas and kangaroos and things like that. But in any event, it's a very beautiful park, and the signs at the information center spoke about how ancient this is. A lot of ancient species. It's just like, I guess, the way marsupials survived in Australia. A lot of other plant species and other very ancient plants that were outcompeted or otherwise disappeared in North America still presumably Europe and most of Asia, still have survived here in Australia. So quite a fascinating place. Interesting chat with the ladies there, very concerned about American politics and whether we really do intend to invade the world. I suspect they have realized that that's all propaganda. Not invading anyone to the best of my knowledge, but still it is interesting to see how much our elections have generated interest in other parts of the world. But you can see again, this extraordinary, this is only my second time in Australia. When I was walking around Sydney, it was similar, that you can just see tree species that there's nothing like some of these trees in North America. They really are quite alien looking. So it's a beautiful drive up here. It's about an hour and a half, 2 hours from Brisbane. And you do here at the end kind of wind your way up into these low mountains. And again, this is their cold season, and you can see this is very much a rainforest. It's a very different climate from what I'm accustomed to in various parts of the United States. So is this overlanding? Well, I've got a Skoda rental car that I drove straight asphalt here. So I've been busy at the plant, so I don't really get to sightsee. This really is not an overlanding trip. This is a work trip. But I extended it over the weekend thinking I would need to do more work on Monday. So I pushed the trip through a weekend, and here on Saturday I get to drive up here and hike in this gorgeous wilderness area. I'll go ahead and put down the cell phone and see exactly where this trail takes me. It's a little weird for me to be walking a trail without Gaia. Usually I have a trail map with me, but this one seems so well marked and civilized, and as the lady said, I'm certain I'll be quite fine just following this trail down and back. So there's enough of a break in the mist here. You can begin to sort of see the valley descending down into it, and very well maintained, well groomed trail. And I've seen 3 or 4 people so far just walking up as I'm walking down. It is an extraordinarily beautiful place. It's quite a beautiful day. The sun is beginning to peek through. Looks like some of the mist has burned off. So continuing my descent into the valley along this well-groomed trail. Again, the sun's kind of come out, and it's actually quite beautiful. Through the tree canopy, you can only just begin to make out where the top of this cliff is. And now very near the bottom of the valley. And with my eye, I can discern the top of the cliffs. It's hard to see with the trees, with the tree canopy, but you can kind of just see it there. And of course, right there, beautiful waterfall. So, and this is really an extraordinary little treasure. So, same idea, the main circuit there is blocked off, presumably because of severe weather, presumably erosion, washouts, whatnot. Binabura is where I came from. It's another 400 meters. Just walked by a couple who said there's not much there. It sort of ends abruptly. But agreed, since I've come all this way, I might as well walk the last few hundred meters and say that I did the whole thing. So now, slowly switched back my way down. And now we're in the floor of the valley, and you can see, typical of the rainforest, another small sprinkling storm has moved in.
Another little semi-waterfall here, going down to the floor of the valley along the trail. This is not actually the end of the trail. Remember, it's the name of the pond, or pool here at the bottom. The pool in general is the end of the trail. I'm going to go ahead and walk a bit further. I suspect it ends just a short distance down. I wanted to stop and take a moment to get video of that beautiful confluence of these two streams at the bottom of the valley. And I started earlier, I believe it's either a 3 or a 6 kilometer trail. It might be 6 kilometers. So 5K is 3 miles, so call it 3 1/4, 3.5 miles each way. And I'd say it's worth it. I mean, this is quite a beautiful sight here at the bottom of the valley. And you can see the sun broke back out. So another one of these rainforesty, misty, drizzly bits has moved on. And now another cloud is obscuring the sun. Quite beautiful, quite nice. This is what the lady meant when she said, the trail ends abruptly. She did say there's no one down here, so like right now I have the place to myself. I would assume people occasionally jump in there to cool off in the hot summer days. That is, I gather, the pool. And the trail ends in these rocks right alongside it. So I'm just a hop, skip, and a jump from where I filmed a moment ago.
One other tradition Kathy and I have always maintained is attending Catholic Mass on our travels. So in this case, on Sunday, I was able to take a quick walk from the hotel and attend Mass in a beautiful and interestingly contemporary in terms of its architecture church that was just up the hill. So it was a nice walk on a pleasant day. The rain held back, and I will say it was just different enough to be quite interesting.
So I found this very confusing because I keep saying Good Shepherd Catholic Grade School. One part that's interesting is that there are Catholic grade schools here in Australia. So I did not know that. Curious to learn more. But then this is Our Lady of the Southern Cross Catholic Church, surrounded by Good Shepherd Catholic Grade School. So now I just have to figure out which door I'm supposed to use, but this is where the church and the Mass are.
So lastly here in this video, I'll close with some still photos of my recent trip to the Norfolk Naval Base. Had a wonderful time, got to stay at Admiral's Row, which is an amazing historic place, again, just because of the circumstances of an old ROTC friend. And it was wonderful for him to host us. There's a few of us there. Again, we hadn't seen each other, some of us for 35 or 40 years. We toured the naval base itself. I should point out here, this still photo was kind of a gag. One of the guys had a picture of me. That's me dead center as a dorky 19-year-old Marine option naval ROTC midshipman. But we got to see here the USS Wisconsin and a number of ships that happened to be there at anchor. Highly recommend, if you've never made the trip, go ahead and make it. The Wisconsin alone was an extraordinary experience to see some World War II history. And you can get a tour of the ships that are currently at anchor. Here's a kind of blurry photo, but me trying to capture a tilt rotor Osprey as we drove by. But it was especially meaningful because we got together the week before Memorial Day weekend. And as we all struggle to remember, this isn't just about cookouts and a day off work. The difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day is on Memorial Day, we pause to honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice. As the cliche goes, all gave some, but some gave all. So it is an important day to just sit and have remembrance and appreciation for those who gave their lives for our freedom.